my great granddad, Jimmy Crow Wallen, was probably the best mentor I ever had. He was the best tall tale teller I ever knew. He was so good at putting all the people, all the places you knew, and then just walking you upside the head with the punchline. His father-in-law, my great granddad, was Norman Wall, and he was known in his day as the best mule handler in his part of the country. He trained mules to plow. He could break a mule. He'd take it down the creek and break them in a creek. But he had one mule that far was superior to any other mule that he had. He called him Big Show. And Big Show was a 3-year-old jack. And he was a perfect specimen. Ears stood up correctly. Nice, lean body. But Big Show had one Achilles heel. He oftentimes got colic. And colic for a mule is a very dangerous situation. One day, my great granddad Norman Wall heard old Big Show just screeching out in pain. He knew immediately what was wrong. He ran up to the barn, and just inside the door of the barn, he had some 5-gallon buckets of water. He knew how to take care of the colic. And hanging above those buckets of water was a bugle, a Civil War bugle. It was said it had led many charges during different battles of the Civil War. He reached out and grabbed that bugle, grabbed a 5-gallon bucket of water, went over, and Big Show laying there on the ground, he gently raised his tail, inserted that bugle into the correct position, and started pouring in that water into that bugle, or what he thought was water. He got about a gallon in, and Big Show just jumped up and started screaming in pain. He was running around the barn. And so my granddaddy realized he'd set a bucket of kerosene right there by those buckets of water. Well, I gotta tell you, old Big Show, he began passing gas. He began tooting just a little. But it wasn't long before it wasn't just little toots. It was actually a melody. It was the battle hymn of the Republic. Note for note, he didn't miss a note. We made our way around the barn there, and he kicked over that bucket of kerosene, and a spark caught, and that kerosene caught on fire. Well, my great granddaddy, he's trying to put out that fire, and old Big Show, he just makes lickety split for the road. Got out to 7th Highway, just south of Warsaw, a little town called Frisco, Missouri. By the time he got to Warsaw, now back then everybody had a mule. Some people had several mules. It was the farmhand. He needed mules. By the time he got that 7 miles to Warsaw, mules had heard him blaring out that battle hymn of the Republic with that bugle in the correct position. He had gathered up 50 mules by the time we got to Warsaw. And if I'm lying, I'm dying. Them mules, there was jacks and jennies and youngins. And them mules, they started braying right along with Battle Hymn of the Republic in 4-part harmony. Well, sir, they made their way up 65 Highway, headed for Sedalia. By the time they got to Sedalia, there was 10,000 mules following. All of them in 4-part harmony with that bugle inserted in the correct position. When they got to Sedalia, people thought there was an impromptu parade going on. They went out to see what was going on. Big Show, he led them all down through the fairgrounds, down through the mule barns. He knew right where that was. He'd been there last year and would have won the contest, except he got a bad case of the colic right before the contest.
Huh.
Headed up to 65 highway, turned right, and started heading towards Jeff City. By the time they got to Jeff City, there was 25,000 new, all in four-part harmony. Well, they made their way to the Capitol. Started going around that rotunda there at the Capitol. Congress all in session there. Thought there was some kind of a political rally going on. They recessed so they could go out and see what was happening. When they got out there, they were amazed. They were amazed. Now, they had a bunch of red streamers out that day. I don't know why, but they had a bunch of red streamers out that day. And them mules going around that rotunda, them red streamers started wrapping around their necks. Them congressmen were afraid they were starting a brand new political party. And them red streamers, they wrapped around their necks, and from that time forward, them congressmen, they use a lot of red tape. That day, Congress voted the Missouri mule as the state animal. Headed back out up towards 50 highway, up towards Warrensburg, Missouri. When they got to Warrensburg, Missouri, there was 100,000 mules, all in four-part harmony, with that bugle in the correct position. Made their way down 50 highway. Now, the board of directors of CMSC at that time, Central Missouri State College, they was all trying to figure out, they needed a mascot for the new sports teams. And when they heard all that ruckus, they went outside, and that very day, they voted the Missouri Mule as the mascot of Central Missouri State. Still to this day, that mule is the mascot. On up they went, headed towards Independence, Missouri. When they got to Independence, Missouri, 100,000 mules, all in four-part harmony. All of them made their way down 15th Street, what we call Truman Road to this day. Truman's sitting out there on his porch. When he heard those mules, he stood up and saluted, went inside and started playing the Battle Hymn of the Republic right along with them. Well, they turned north. It took them over a half hour to get past his house. They turned north, went up, and got to Lathrop, Missouri. When they got to Lathrop, Missouri, there was over 250,000 mules, all in four-part harmony. All of them noticing that bugle still inserted in the correct position. When they got there, there was a government man that was buying mules to send to World War I. He went over and he asked Big Show, "Would you like to join the army?" Big Show nodded his head, let out with a big old "Eeyaw!" And when he did, it was so loud, it dislodged that bugle. And that day, those 250,000 mules all joined the army. They all lifted up their right front leg and saluted. Over 25 million mules would be sent to World War I from Missouri. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the mule.